Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, Russian President Vladimir Putin is sworn into his fourth term in office after nearly 2 decades in power. Could the fourth time be the charm? And traditional Hawaii dance like the hula makes a splash at the 120th founding celebration of Peking University. I got up close with delegates from the Hawaii University holding the spotlight on the importance of people-to-people relations. You're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. We begin our program today in Moscow, where Vladimir Putin was inaugurated for his fourth term as the president of Russia. This will extend his nearly 2 decades in power by another 6 years after a winning of a landslide victory in the presidential election in March. But many say with the domestic issues and external challenges, this could be the most complicated time of his political career. Really? Before our discussion, take a look at this.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin on his fourth term as President of Russia. The 65-year-old leader has ruled Russia for 18 years. He has promised to improve living standards at home during his next Kremlin stint.
Клянусь при осуществлении полномочий президента Российской Федерации.
While in office of the President of the Russian Federation, I pledge to respect and safeguard rights and liberties of a person and of a citizen, to conform with the Constitution of the Russian Federation and to protect it, to protect sovereignty and independence, security and integrity of the state, serve truly to the people.
Верно служить народу.
In 2000, after Boris Yeltsin's sensational resignation, Mr. Putin began to govern the biggest country on earth in terms of territory. He has worked to restore Russian national pride, tried to fix the economy, and strengthen the military. In Mr. Putin's previous terms in office, Russia not only successfully hosted the Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014, but between 2000 and 2008, the Russian economy got a major boost from rising commodity prices. The country's GDP grew 7% per year on average. Disposable incomes more than doubled, and in dollar-denominated terms increased 8-fold. But diplomatic and economic troubles with the West began in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea after signing a treaty of accession with the self-declared Republic of Crimea. In 2015, Russia again enraged the U.S. and its allies by intervening and helping the forces of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad against the rebels. With Mr. Putin's support, the Syrian army is fighting militant groups, including ISIL, all throughout the country. Supporters see him as the father of the nation figure who has restored national pride and expanded Moscow's global clout with interventions in Syria and Ukraine. However, Mr. Putin is facing big challenges both at home and abroad. There were anti-Putin protests on Saturday when more than 1,000 have been arrested in demonstrations across the country. He's been accused of undermining democracy and incurring Western sanctions, which have hurt the Russian economy. The country's economy went into recession from early 2014 and officially out of it in 2016. Mr. Putin has his work cut out for him the next 6 years, and it may just be the biggest challenge of his political career.
So what is Mr. Putin's blueprint for his 6-year term as Russian president? Will he be able to implement that blueprint? With us here in our Beijing studio, Cui Hongjian, who is the director of the Department of European Studies at China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir, to our program. Joining us in Moscow, we have Mark Sloboda, who is an international relations and security analyst, originally coming from the U.S. And meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., we are joined by Anton Fedyashin, who is a professor of Russian history at American University. I want to welcome to the three of you gentlemen with us. Mr. Sloboda, since you are in Moscow, what do you make of another 6 years for President Putin? 70% that's the voters voting for him this round of the election. What do you think is the voters very impressed with when it comes to President Putin?
Yeah, with 70% of the Russian population voting for him, and recent opinion polls confirming that he has the approval of 82% of the Russian population. Putin is actually at the height of his popularity and power going into his fourth and presumably last term in office. He has gained this, one, by recovering Russia from the economic catastrophe of the 1990s, finishing off Islamic insurgency in Russia's southern Caucasus in the 1990s, and then most recently enduring economic warfare from the West, and the reunification with Crimea, and standing up to U.S. And allied regime change operations in Syria has helped increase the popularity of his foreign policy credentials. So he's quite well placed going into his sixth term, although the expectations he has set are extremely high.
All right. Mr. Fidashian, though, when you look at the answer, Mr. Sloboda, the word 1990s have been mentioned a lot, the past legacy of President Putin. Meanwhile, the word of standing up against the West is being mentioned a lot. Will President Putin be able to have a brilliant achievement continuously for another 6 years, depending on these two fronts?
Well, you're essentially asking a question about whether he will be successful economically and on the foreign policy front. And so economically, Russia stands to gain if oil and gas prices continue to increase, which they have started to do lately. And number two, if Vladimir Putin successfully integrates the Eurasian Economic Union with China's One Belt, One Road project. And that seems to be moving apace. Putin has presided over a pivot towards Asia of Russia's making, and the West has helped him greatly in moving in that direction. It seems like the Russian population is very supportive of diversifying Russian geoeconomics and geopolitics from the West to the East, alienating no one and yet cooperating with everyone around Russia in the greater Eurasian region. And again, let me just support what Mark mentioned earlier, that the 82% approval rating that the Independent Levada Center just released shows that whatever the mix of economic and foreign policy measures Putin has pursued for the coming several years, he's safe in his position as a popular Russian leader in continuing that trajectory.
All right. Talking about China-Russia, we do have some quotes coming from President Putin when he's trying to analyze future years of relation with China. Here's what he said. China, Russia's strategic partner, bilateral relations are at, quote, unprecedentedly high level. And he said Russia values that very much. He also said his country will make every effort to expand cooperation with China, including the connectivity between the two countries through Belt and Road Initiative, which is something that China raised, Mr. Cui, and also through the Eurasian Economic Union, which is something that Russia originally initiated. But, Mr. Cui, to what extent will his interaction, Russia's interaction with China, will be able to replace some of the lost ground that Russia used to have when it comes to its relations with, quote-unquote, the West, mainly?
Yes, I think that during the last term for Mr. Putin, China and Russia relations achieved a lot, because I think the bigger reason is the long term for Mr. Putin as a president in Russia provide a stability of a policy continuity of relations. Without a doubt about that. But now the question is, yes, we are looking for there will be more joint effort from both two countries by collecting the Belt and Road Initiative and the Euro-Asia Economic Union. But it's just a part of the this efforts for Russia to do something to develop its economy. But if we look at this structure of economy, indeed, still there still are a lot of requirement from Russia towards Europe, towards other Western advanced economies. So I think that the Belt and Road Initiative will do something to help the sustainable economic development for Russia, but it's not all.
Right.
So I think that maybe a more comfortable position and also a more sustainable economic development for Russia should try to take use of the resources, not only from eastern part, but also from western
diversify,
part.
as you said, and
Yes.
also that's the word used by some of the other gentlemen earlier. But Mr. Sloboda, when you think about this diversification, diversity rather, when it comes to Russia's economic interaction, earlier there's already heavy threats coming from quote-unquote the West, including some European countries and the United States, particularly sanctions, further sanctions against Russia. It could be about many things, about spy issue, about Syria, about Russia's border, things like that. So that's kind of vulnerable. So when it comes to diversify, how much capability does Russia have from its own initiative to diversify, really?
Yeah, I think the last few years have really proven, with a combination of the oil price war that Saudi Arabia deliberately waged on Russia and Iran, deliberately overproducing and trying to crash the oil price, and this combined with round after round of Western sanctions, Russia's economy was really stress tested, and they were stress tested down to below $30 a barrel price of oil. And the recession that Russia experienced was by all accounts, relatively mild. And sanctions accounted for no more than 1% GDP. Western sanctions accounted for no more than 1% GDP loss per year. Russia has since recovered on its own. Back into growth. They're looking at a growth GDP last year and even higher this year. The decoupling, economic decoupling from Europe slowly continues. China is Russia's most important economic and geostrategic partner on both levels. Russian economic diversification has actually benefited from this. There's been a great deal of import substitution and a changing of sources of financial lending and borrowing away from Europe. Russian agricultural sector is booming. It is big money in Russia right now, and Russia is now the #2 food exporter in the world and the #1 wheat exporter in the world. So the Russian economy really has diversified away, and actually, ironically, it's the West and Saudi Arabia that has benefited this. Oil and gas together, hydrocarbons, now are no more than 13% of Russia's GDP.
But Professor Fidyashian, when you look at the picture, you still see that the house income of Russia, average, has been going down quite dramatically. Let's just say from the year 2013 to the year 2017. So earlier what Mr. Sloboda mentioned about the recovery of the Russian economy as a result of diversification, it seems that has not yet benefited the real grassroots, the real people there. So how much do you think that is likely to change? What speed? Will that have an impact on the popularity of President Putin?
So far, it hasn't actually. It's remarkable that the decline in the household income, which began just before the Ukraine crisis in 2013, has had an inverse relationship with Putin's popularity, in part because he has played the card of Russian patriotism and national well-being and recovery against the declining income. Part of it is that he has very articulately sold this trend as a result of oil prices combined with the Western sanctions, an attempt by the West to put Russia back on its knees. And remarkably, this has actually worked. As a matter of fact, over the past 18 months, consumer spending has been on the rise, although there has not been a sudden recovery in the median household income in Russia. And yet, people are willing to spend for patriotic purposes, essentially. Listen, the Russians remember the 1990s when the situation was infinitely worse than it is today. So Putin has a lot of room, a lot of cushion room to play with, and the population is willing to withstand Western pressure over issues that many Russians see as the West having done the same thing. They're willing to withstand this and to slowly grow their economy.
We talk about the Russian economy. One of the things that people are also looking at is to what extent is it going to find the new growth engine? We heard Mr. Sloboda talking about agriculture. We also heard about the recovery of the natural gas and oil. But, Mr. Cui, do you think there is a new engine that would, in a way, making the Russian economy take off, even though it could take some time?
I think that in short term, it's difficult to find some new dynamic for, maybe a sharp growth for economy in Russia. Also, firstly, Mr. Putin and his government need to deal with a very, very big issue. How could Russian economy give up the dependency on the oil and gas resources and everything? And then how could, maybe Russia could find out more export from agriculture or some other, but also we need to understand how this requirement from other market, including China or some other Asian economies. So I think, yes, it will take some long time for Russia and Mr. Putin to reform its economic market.
But reform is the word, isn't it? I mean, Mr. Sloboda, we understand that the Russian president now, Mr. Putin, has once again nominated the Medvedev, who used to be the prime minister, now to be the prime minister again. And very likely the lower house of the parliament is going to confirm that. Some suggest this selection of personnel means continuity. Others say, well, the prime minister used to have a reform mind, and he's been talking about reform for at least some years. So will this be a new stage in which reform embarked once again? To what direction, Mr. Sloboda?
Yeah, I think reform is a much ballyhooed word. It's always assumed that reform is a good thing without specifying what type of reform that was. The reform touted by Medvedev particularly was privatization, something that isn't necessarily greeted very well by the Russian population, remembering the shock and often criminal privatizations of the 1990s. I think Medvedev's #1 most important quality for President Putin is his loyalty, and that's why he's been appointed. He also, Medvedev's popularity is not very high among the Russian population. What popularity he has had has always been something that he basically absorbed from being in the presence and having the support of Putin. I think he exists as a lightning rod, that if things turn south for whatever reason, economically or so on, that he would be the one to fall on the sword and the blame could be put on him. I don't look at Medvedev as lasting through the entirety of of Putin's next 6 years in office. After about 3 years, I think that you'll start to look at Russia, that Putin trying to segment his legacy with making sure that there is a good, controlled transition to a leader who will preferably continue his policies. I don't look for that to be Medvedev. In fact, I look for Medvedev to be replaced by someone later in Putin's presidency who could be a possible successor.
Well, that possible successor could also probably give some hint about the future leadership of Russia after a few years. But talking about that, let's also talk about the geopolitics. Now, the U.S.-Russia relationship is more than interesting, Mr. Cui, if I could use that word. Given the enormous amount of chaos of politics going on inside Washington about the legitimacy of the presidency and about some of the other issues related to President Trump. How will that impact President Putin's plan to have somewhat normal relationship with Washington?
I think now the ball should be in the court of the United States. Also, we know that even there was some very friendly message from Mr. Trump to Mr. Putin, but we can find out in the last 1 year, we find out a tougher and tougher, stance from Washington to Moscow, and even, of course, at the same time, sweet words from Mr. Trump to Mr. Putin. So we need to find out the real situation of these bilateral relations between Russia and the United States. And also another very important time is how about the result of a middle-term election in the United States. Once the Democratic Party take a dominant position in the Congress, I think it will give much more pressure on Mr. Trump to have a tougher policy towards Russia.
Well,
but of course, I think that Russia also could do something to try to get maybe more advantage position when it faces the United States. For example, how could Russia to try to raise some issue, or especially some regional issue, including in Europe, in Syria, or some other, to try to get the opportunity to have an equal engagement with the United States.
Well, I'm not sure whether the Democrats will really win back the Capitol Hill, to say the least. But Mr. Vedashian, let me ask you about that also. Now you see a lot of uncertainties. You also see Russia realizing it needs to have somewhat normal relationship with the United States and with the West if it wants to develop its economy. So what can we see about the next step? Particularly, you have a new Secretary of State now in Washington who is quite, quote-unquote, hawkish, according to his previous words regarding Russia, at least.
Yes, you also have a new national security advisor, John Bolton, who is also very hawkish. So the moves in Washington do not augur well for any kind of thaw in the relationship. But listen, I think that Vladimir Putin has made peace with the way that things are developing, and knowing that he will most likely outlast Donald Trump and the current Republican administration in the White House, he's willing to sectorize U.S.-Russian relations, to work with the U.S. where the two countries can work together, and to marginalize other issues. And he's willing to wait because he knows that profound fissures are appearing within the Western camp in general, between Washington and the European capitals. Among other things, on the Iran deal, about which we should be hearing a decision from Washington in the next, 5-6 days.
We hope.
So the Russians are playing a long game and waiting to see if they can start turning the Europeans towards Moscow, and then waiting for Washington to begin to follow or reconsider its position towards Russia.
All right. Anton Fidiashian, Mark Slobodka, and Cui Hongjian, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. The hula and other traditional Hawaii dance living up Peking University 120th anniversary celebration. We talked to the students there and try to understand the cultural exchanges between China and the United States. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. I'm Tian Wei. At the time when people are talking about the trade dispute between China and the United States, at the time when people are discussing about some of the most important regional security issues here in Northeast Asia, it is always heartwarming to see the people-to-people exchanges between China and the U.S. And I've seen some of the scenes recently. One of China's oldest universities, Peking University, celebrated its 120th birthday last week. Colleges and universities from around the world sent delegations and best wishes to PKU. One of them is from the United States, the University of Hawaii. They performed their traditional dance for Chinese teachers and students on the anniversary gala. I happened to visit their rehearsal before the show and heard their stories about China before the interview. Take a look at this.
Kawaii hamakua. Kawa.
Kawaii hamakua ike. Kawaii o kai ulala. Mahiki inala. Haule ila lola. Mahiki inala. Haule ila lola. Tu o eda oa oa ha tu itelela. Au heala noia.
Eyala noia.
Ayala mahea.
Eyala noia. Ahe.
Oia nei olohe olela. E mama ue.
Kawa.
Kaua I hamakua ike. Kawaii o pai ulala. Mahiki inala. Haule ila lola. Mahiki inala. Haule ila lola. Tu o eda oa oa ha tu itelela. Au heala noia.
Eyala noia.
Ayala mahea.
Eyala noia. Ahe.
Oia nei olohe olela. E mama ue.
He ma'ino kamehameha.
How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
So
Thank
great.
you.
We saw your performance earlier here. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell me who you are, because we are facing an audience from all over the world.
Yeah. So we are part of the.
Oh, I have to come over here.
We're part of the University of Hawaii, and we come from one of the community colleges called Windward Community College. We're located in Kaneohe on the island of Oahu, the capital sort of island.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Your name?
My name is Autumn Hesia.
Okay.
My name is Von Chi. I'm also from Oahu. I'm a student at Windward Community College as well.
Good meeting you guys. What about you?
Aaron Salah.
Beautiful singing.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
singing.
Aaron Salah. I'm a professor, one of the faculty members in the University of Hawaii system.
Wow, wow. First time for you guys.
First time to
time
China.
to China.
Yeah.
Wow.
We get to travel to Asia quite a bit, but this is our first time to Beijing and enjoying the weather. Thank you for this beautiful weather. And just an incredible experience for our students.
Yeah, what does that mean, I mean, for you guys? If I could stand here so that our audience could see. Hula dance, what exactly is the dance that you're trying to convey here?
Well, for me, dancing hula is to tell a story about our ancestors and to keep that lineage alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What story you just told?
Well, we just told the story about our ancestor Kavika.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Who is?
So I just started teaching them. It's okay.
Here's chapter 1.
Yeah.
Chapter 2 over here.
Chapter 2. It's a melody. We just got through the first verse, and it's about the last reigning king of Hawaii. His name is David La'amea Kalakaua. So the Hawaiianized version of David is Kavika. So the melody is called Kavika.
All right. And this dance is a paying tribute.
Yeah, it's what we call a mele inoa, and it's written for our high chiefs in order to honor them and make sure that everyone after knows of the good deeds that they did, and to sort of give, we call it ho'omana, or to sort of give good energy towards all of our.
A lot of good energy that I felt, absolutely.
Okay, I'm so glad.
But not only students, not only the wonderful teacher, but also some big names, I guess, coming from Hawaii. I know a little bit about you. I know a little bit about you. You're providing advice even for some of the best Hollywood blockbusters about Polynesian culture.
Sure.
So tell me about how you introduce Polynesian culture to the others through artworks. You know, hula dance like this, and, you know, even other art forms as well.
We're ocean people, so we always start from the ocean and start in sort of with our feet in the ground, as you see, literally bare feet in the ground today. We see our ancestry coming from the land and coming from the ocean. And so once you get people to understand looking at the ocean as a way of life, we can build connections, you know. We fly over the ocean now, but the ocean is still the same. It's still this connector, bridge building, you know, vehicle for us to connect to each other. I will say this, you know, there's a lot of Chinese Hawaiians in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the big reasons for that is that the first group of immigrants to come to Hawaii were from China, professionally brought to Hawaii to work in sugar plantations. And that first group of immigrants were all single men from China. And on purpose. And as a result of all these single men coming into the islands, of course, single men found Hawaiian women, and as a result, we have this multitude of genealogies of Chinese Hawaiians. I think both of these two are Chinese Hawaiians
Really?
as well.
Are you?
And so are we.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys say, who has a Chinese ancestry? Everybody raise their hand. Wow, it's wonderful when you look at the history, isn't it? But I guess today it's different because you're traveling all the way in order to show to the university here in Peking University and also many others from around the world the Hawaiian culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot bigger than, you know, just that. We're here representing the University of Hawaii, which is a system of schools throughout all the islands. So we're not just representing the entire campus itself, but, you know, also the people of Hawaii itself. So,
yes.
You know, that's kind of a big responsibility that we have here, but, you know, it's been fun, and it's kind of a great experience for all of us. Both of us have never been outside of the country. So to be out here and see different cultures and kind of be immersed in all of that, it's kind of just breathtaking.
I think it was a really big deal for us to be invited here to present, you know, our culture and have Hawaiian be included in part of this celebration.
What was it like before taking off from Hawaii? Coming to Beijing for the first time.
It was very exciting. There was a lot of preparation that went into it. But yeah, it's such a great opportunity that we're here. And before this, we were kind of talking, okay, like, what is it going to be like? And it's been everything that we've ever, I guess, heard it would be. You know, the people are amazing here. The food is really good. It's been a great experience thus far, and we're really privileged that we get to
But you know, you guys also came at a time when there are a lot of things going on in this part of the world. You know, if you talk about a big issue, there's a DPRK issue in which China, US is involved. What is really going to bring us together? People always wonder about that. Is that fragile? I really wondered from your perspective.
Apart from everything going on, the fact that we can kind of set everything aside and come here to share our culture with the Chinese, and the Chinese share our culture with them, their culture with us, speaks more for itself. You know, that's just the most amazing thing, you know, really, that we can put away all these political issues and things that are much bigger than just a community college coming here to visit and kind of share a little bit about themselves.
Sometimes if we look back in our culture, we could always find some inspirations. Whether it is about conflict, or whether it's about looking forward to the future, or hope. I just wonder, from your own culture, is there some inspiration that you can share with us? Some clues?
Gosh, you know...
a lot, I guess.
Yeah, there is a lot, but I think one of the things is, you know, because we come from a multicultural community in Hawaii now, Chinese, Japanese, Samoan, you know, a lot of different kinds of people coming together, and literally, you know, creating children so that there are generations of not just black or white, but black and white and all of these different colors mixed together. Hawaii offers an opportunity to understand how world peace is possible, because there are so many different kinds of people working, really negotiating, navigating, getting together every day, and getting along at that. This notion of color consciousness rather than color blindness, and I think that's what we try to bring with us in everywhere we go, not just to China, but, you know, every time we represent the campus, represent the university, represent Hawaii, we are representing this notion that color consciousness is possible, and we should celebrate in that consciousness rather than be weary of it, and rather than be leery of it, for sure.
You know what? When I was watching you guys rehearse, I felt, it's not just tiger moms coming from China. There are tiger teachers coming from Hawaii. Aren't they?
Yes,
You even dare to say that? but you guys were so wonderful. I'm looking forward to tonight's performance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll leave you four of you to work.
Thank you.
Let's stick. Okay, let's stick.
Quick, get back to the stage.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you.
While the dancers are doing their rehearsal, I continue to talk Aaron Sala, who is the kumu, or teacher of the dancers. Meanwhile, we are also joined by another lady whose name is Denise Ebikonen. She is the Dean of the College of Social Sciences from the University of Hawaii. She's also a professor of economics. She used to spend quite some time in China, in Sichuan province, and she, together with her colleagues, share with us their observations about the changes in China. It was great rehearsal earlier.
Thank you. We've been working hard.
Very hard, you guys.
Honored to be here. Honored to be
And
here.
like I said, the tiger teachers.
Right. Not an easy job, but we're really honored to be representing the University of Hawaii here in Peking University for 120 years. Just amazing, amazing opportunity for us.
And even more important, it's an interaction among all universities coming from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And you're representing the University of Hawaii and the United States too. But for Denise, not your first time.
I came first as a student, so to be here with the university and to be part of the student exchange, it's a real honor and privilege.
You went to Sichuan as a student.
I did. I was a professor at Sichuan Shifan Dashui.
Wow. A lot of spice food then.
Spicy food. I love the huajiao.
Huajiao.
Oh, I love it.
The pepper.
Oh, it's so fantastic.
Yeah. But you know, what we have learned as a young lady or as a young man will be with us all the time.
That's right. The experiences that your dancers had, the experience
absolutely life-changing.
I had, it's really transformational opportunity. You have an imagination, an image of what China might be, but when you're here and you experience it, it's something different.
How different is it?
Gosh, you know, I will tell you this. I can never go home and eat Chinese food now because the taste, I mean, and it really is, to me, a testament to the richness of the culture here. There are so many different tastes, so many different colors in the food itself. And we, you know, lots of Chinese at home as well. But there's something really organic about being here in the center of it all, I should say. No, it's transformational, as Denise said. And for our students too, life-changing. Many of them traveling internationally for the very first time.
Wow.
And we're really happy to be bringing them here for the first time.
Right. You know, when we heard about another country or another culture from afar, we have a certain kind of image about it. And it is only when we arrive in that culture that things begin to be toppled down. You know, our imagination is seen. It is not as close as we thought it would be to the reality. I just wonder, what exactly is it for you?
We're starting to get more and more Chinese tourists at home. And it's a challenge for us because Chinese way of life is very different from what we're used to. At home, everybody, you know, we stop in the car before we turn right. You know, we're looking out for cars when we're pedestrians on the street. But what's really interesting to me is that there is a very much a mutual respect for transportation here. Pedestrians in the road, moving with the traffic. You know, traffic doesn't necessarily stop all the time. But there seems to be this mutual respect and understanding about how things move, how things work. And that for me is sort of eye-opening in terms of seeing Chinese from China in China rather than Chinese from China in Hawaii, and how we might learn from that experience, and how I might now take that experience home and say, you know, we can learn from how they see the world, and Chinese can also learn from Hawaiians and Hawaii people how we see the world as well.
People-to-people interaction. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you're performing for the people.
Exactly.
And you were being invited into people's homes. People always ignore the importance of this people-to-people interaction. But actually, eventually, it is worth something that really works.
You know, I agree with you. It was 30 years ago that I had this experience in China. It influences who I am as a person today, as an international trade economist, as a professor and dean. I want to create these same kind of people-to-people relations. I want to bring it back to recognizing that University of Hawaii has a 30-year history with Beida, and we have these kind of collaborations that are fundamental, and they're going to help be a part of creating the future, creating this better understanding, better recognition that you talked about between our people in America, in Hawaii, and those of China. These kinds of university relationships are so valuable. So we're so happy to be here for PKU's birthday.
And your movie is here.
Yes.
Viewed by millions and millions of Chinese audience.
That's great to hear. That is great to
Have
hear.
you ever thought about that?
No, I hadn't.
Until you arrived here.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. I think, you know, I think it's amazing that Disney would consider doing a project based on an oceanic theme. And, you know, the idea that that theme resonates with Chinese people is awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So eventually, what will bring us together? Politics and trade or culture?
All of the above.
Food.
Food and music. Yeah.
That is the thing, isn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm having a blast here watching the dance, the hula dance coming from Hawaii. And thank you for sharing also the news.
Thank you.
Sweet memories of China. 谢谢你. 谢谢. 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 Thank you so much, Aaron. That's a very easy conversation with the students and teachers coming from University of Hawaii from the United States. You know what? People-to-people relationship, when it's being built, once again, it is going to help with the bilateral relations eventually. And those easy conversations eventually will become real friendship. That's a heartwarming story about hula dancers coming from Hawaii. Right now, we understand there are volcano eruptions in Hawaii. We wish the best for them and their families. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, and check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media as well. I'm Tian Wei, and everyone on World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.